How's it going, YouTube? It's LB Ninja 7, your resident Mistweaver monk, and I am here back with our tier list. Now, this tier list is a living one, meaning that every week I'm coming through and modifying it based on what I've seen on the PTR. This is a tier list where I am trying to predict what the healer meta will look like if things remain as they are in the PTR when they're implemented into the game for Season 3. So if this looks very weird to you, very outdated, it's because it's from a few weeks ago and it's for the PTR. So that's why things look odd. Now, let's go and get into this. I've been really focusing on a few healers. Like, I've been really practicing on the PTR and like jamming keys with specific healers because there have been some changes. We're coming off of like a few rounds of buffs. They kind of did 2 rounds of buffs and nerfs last week where they nerfed things like Disc Priest. They nerfed around like raid performances, like Mistweaver took some nerfs to raid performances, but then some compensation buffs that do actually kind of help them in Mythic Plus a little bit, but also hurt them in ways that really will impact their viability. So they've changed a lot of different healers. The first one that I want to talk about is actually Mistweaver and Resto Shaman. So the way that I see the meta going is kind of like what we started to see sprout up in these last few seasons of The War Within and even kind of toward the end of Dragonflight to an extent. And that is that there's going to be like whatever comp is the best, which is right now, in Season 2, it's Disc Priest, Vengeance Demon Hunter, like that god comp that's been around for a while. And then there's also going to be a physical comp. And last time that I did this ranking, they had just changed the Mystic Touch physical debuff that Mistweaver, or basically all monks, applied and made it into an 8% buff. So that kind of said, like, hey, they're really wanting there to be a physical comp kind of combating or alongside the best comp, or even if it is the best comp. So that is why I believed that there would be one standard, just the most powerful healer in the most powerful comp, and then the most powerful physical enabler. And although they did revert that nerf, now Mystic Touch is still going to be 5%, I do still see there being a physical comp that we're going to see. However, I just don't think with more testing, I don't think it's going to be Mistweaver that's going to be the play. Now, that's not to say that there won't be some physical comps, sprouting up and playing with Mistweavers and stuff. It's just saying that there are better ways to get your monk buff in the game. And I actually think that now that I've had a lot more weeks of testing, I still, to this day, see Brewmaster after Brewmaster after Brewmaster, and I just think that more comps are going to form around a Brewmaster to give them the Mystic Touch buff, rather than forming around a Mistweaver. That's, once again, not to say that that won't happen for Mistweavers. I just think it's going to be less likely, thus that is kind of the meta discussion. So what will kind of fill that role for those physical comps? Well, it really depends on what the DPS looks like. Like, if Balanced Druid is, well, I guess like Feral Druid is the play for a physical comp, you're probably not going to see a Resto Druid alongside a Feral Druid, just like you won't see a Mistweaver alongside a Brewmaster. But one thing that I do think is that I really have been impressed with Resto Shaman. The more that I test it, the more that I get used to their totemic tier set buff, it doesn't feel like a chore like how I initially thought it felt like. It really just feels like a lot of throughput on your downpours, a lot of throughput on your surging totems, and it's a lot of burst throughput rather than what you see in Season 2 when your surging totems are applying just your insurance buff, adding more throughput that way. Your surging totems are a big bursty heal if you can kind of play into all of those elemental nodes and get that big burst heal. So I do think that them giving their mastery and like Wind Fury-ish, whatever it's called, buff that shamans give, I really could see the comp, the physical comp of choice being Brewmaster or Resto Shaman. I think Totemic is the Resto Shaman of choice, and then like Druid, Hunter, like whatever else, Warrior or Rogue or whatever else fills the physical comp. But I do think Brewmaster is kind of outshining Mistweaver on PTR currently, and then I think that alongside that you're going to see something, one of these two, and I do predict it to be Resto Shaman based on what I've seen in the games so far. On top of that, obviously I've been testing Mistweaver the most out of all these. As someone who plays Mistweaver, I'm trying to work on my guide scripts and really get things hammered down. And I initially thought that Conduit was just like so much better than Master of Harmony. However, they have semi-recently buffed Master of Harmony's spot heal that potential energy does. And on top of that, I just think that it's still very good. I think it still hasn't lost anything coming into this season, and currently in season 2, it just is the better damage doer of the two specs, and you don't really need the safety of Conduit in season 2. You still don't really need the safety of Conduit. It's not like you can't do dungeons without Conduit. That's just not the case. So I really do think these are pretty even. I do really still think that there's a lot of power hidden in this tier set for Conduit for Mistweavers because of the extra Jade empowerments you're getting on top of the bonus cooldown of Conduit with Celestials and the minor shieldings, but the shielding is kind of like compared to what other specs can do. So I really do think that I'm going to slide up Mistweaver above, or Master of Harmony above Conduit Mistweaver. Now, I also have been testing with Wildstalker. It's still so good. They had nerfed it a few weeks back, but it still sprouts those heals left and right, blankets with healing. It basically does like a better healing job than Keeper of the Grove, while still having that better damage capability if you're able to sit there and do damage. And it's not like tied to a cooldown like your Keeper of the Grove is with your Convoke to get that free trank and all those splashing swift mins. So I really do think Wildstalker is very powerful. It's going to be the Druid of choice, and it is so strong. And on top of that, dude, Evoker is going crazy now. They're going really crazy in raid. If I'm being honest. So like, they're really shining in raid with the whole like the essence bombs. Those things are crazy. They even nerfed them, and they're still so good. Now that people are getting used to how to use them, you're seeing so much throughput from them. But in Mythic Plus, I do think Chrono Warden is still very good. It has a high damage potential. The one thing that's going to keep it back or hold it back is the fact that it's really hard to form a composition around getting an enablement. Is that a word? I don't know, but finding a spot for the Evoker. Like, why would a meta comp or a meta pushing comp, and this is a meta tier list, a meta prediction tier list, why would they take a Evoker over a Resto Shaman? You could argue that like Evokers and Brewmasters, that's a really good combo, kind of like how Resto Druids and Brewmasters are a very good combo. The way that time dilation works with their stagger is pretty nice. They roll some hots on them. They have some very good spot healing just in case that Brewmaster needs that big spot healing underneath the shield. But outside of that, that's nothing that Resto Shaman can't do. So I do think, although I really do find Evoker to be very powerful, I do want to keep it below Mistweaver because I do think that there's going to be some split in the physical comps with these, I guess, basically these three healers, and whichever Mistweaver of spec of choice will be chosen. In fact, I'm going to move it like this because I do think that Master of Harmony is starting to pull ahead in Mythic Plus specifically. So I do think that like you're going to see more of a split with the compositions here, and Prez is going to be splitting the composition with Disc Priest. Now let's go ahead and talk about Disc Priest though, because they did receive some nerfs, and it's some nerfs to the shielding that they apply. The shields are still very good, and the fact that you're shielding like that is how you do your throughput is still very good, because if you know a mechanic's coming in like 10 seconds, you can power word shield now, do your little ramp with your Radiance and Penance to store up a bigger shield, put another shield on someone. You can still get those Premonition of Insight shields spread around people. You can cast almost any Premonition. I think the only one that doesn't work with it is the final one, Clairvoyance, that doesn't give you those free Insight stacks. Like, this is still very strong. Although they nerf the shields, this one is going to be one that I'm going to focus on more this week to see if these nerfs truly impact it, but still, it's hard to explain, but doing your throughput through shielding, being able to heal now for damage later gives you more time to react to that damage, if that makes sense. So yeah, Disc is still going to look very strong. But one thing that I want to note is that they also just they kind of buffed Voidweaver Disc Priest, where your Mind Blast damage is decreased, but your Entropic Rift damage is increased, which this Voidweaver already does pretty solid, like, boss healing. They have really good steady throughput, and they also have really good burst throughput through their damage. Like, they do big damage with this build. And what was kind of like, it's kind of like the opposite of Mistweaver, where you really just didn't feel too much different when you were fighting packs as opposed to bosses. Like, you basically capped out at like Not really, but you were close to capping out on one target, basically. But this Entropic Rift damage is, it's nothing to scoff at. Like, it can pop for some big damage. The problem with it is that it's really hard to time because it is like, what is it, 8 seconds before the damage actually pops is when you press the button. So it is harder to time, but you're just seeing so much more throughput in those AoE packs, which is kind of one of their weaknesses with Void Weaver. If I had to pick what a weakness is with Void Weaver, I guess, one weakness is that you could just play Oracle and put shields on people. But yeah, it's providing so much damage right now. Like, I think people are pretty. I really do think people are sleeping on this, but I don't think. I do think it is better now than Keeper of the Grove Druid, which I do want to talk about now. I initially really liked Keeper of the Grove Druid because you do have some pretty heavy burst healing compared to what you used to have with your Convokes. But really, like, if you play Resto Druid in Season 2, I want you to ask yourself, like, when is Convoke not enough? And, come back to me with that answer. And if you needed more healing on your Convoke, you kind of don't. You need more healing outside of that, like more steady healing in Mythic Plus, and that is what Wildstalker is bringing to the table more so than Resto Druid or Keeper of the Grove Druid. On top of that, tying your Swiftmans, like needing to press your Swiftmans right after your Convoke to get the full value of your tier set feels really bad in Mythic Plus. Like, you do really want to be holding on to those Swiftmans for when you need them in Mythic Plus, whereas like in Raid, you can kind of just throw them out and kind of plan that whole ramp all together. To get that splash healing from your Swiftmans. But in Mythic Plus, it's not like as easy as just saying, hey, let me Convoke and then immediately Swiftman twice to get that value. It's just not the same. So I do want to bump this healer down, unfortunately. I did think, I don't know, I really believed. I think I was just like coping. I think this was early testing copium that I was inhaling, but I do think that Keeper of the Grove could use a buff, but I don't think it's not like necessary. I just think that it's kind of hard to outshine how Wildstalkers behaving. What am I saying, Chris? Playing right now. Now, Holy Priest. I've been testing with Oracle and Archon a lot lately, and I really am impressed with Archon, but that I am pretty biased toward this tier set. I'm a big fan of Archon and Mythic Plus. I don't think that these are quite like Mistweaver, where they're basically interchangeable depending on what you need. I do, however, think they're pretty close in power level. I don't think either of them are going to be like meta contenders by any stretch, if I'm being honest. So I do kind of want to move Oracle down here, but I do want to keep them next to each other. There is literally nothing wrong with Holy Priest. I think you can push very comfortably with Holy Priest and on either hero talent tree, whatever you want to do. I just don't think that with more testing, I don't find them to be close to in the meta discussion, if I'm being honest. And like, look, they are totally fine. Trust me, everything in this tier, there's nothing wrong with them. That's why I literally named it Nothing Wrong With. So please don't see this and be like, oh, you think Holy Priest is trash. No, I don't. I think they're good. I just, they're moving further away from that meta discussion, if I'm being honest. Like, the gap is starting to separate, and with more testing, we're starting to see how things are going to align. On top of that, let's see, what's one that I haven't really touched on? Holy Paladin. Holy Paladin saw a pretty juicy list of buffs. It's a lot of buffs to their spinders, to their holy shocks, their shock healing, and all in all, I do think they're very good, but I just don't think it's good enough to bring them more into the like meta discussion. I still think that the two meta compositions are still gonna be at the top. You're gonna see Ellismere pop off. That dude is amazing at this game. He will basically make it look like a meta contender for sure. Outside of him, though, and maybe a few other like a handful of other people, I don't think that overall the buffs are enough to bring it into this discussion. However, I do think it is still going to be a very strong performer, specifically Herald of the Sun. Those wings cooldowns are insane, especially with the new tier set. However, one weakness that is really showing itself in my testing is even with your tier set buffing your wings moments, it really highlights how much weaker you are outside of the wings moments, which I think is what these buffs are trying to show us, is the buffs are trying to bring up those moments outside of our wings. And I do think that Lightsmith benefited more from these buffs more so than Herald of the Sun, because once again, Herald of the Sun is built all around your 2-minute cooldown, whereas Lightsmith is kind of built around your 1-minute cooldown, and you really get more moments to shine with those Word of Glories, and you feel less like a spiky mountain of good versus bad. It feels a lot more even, I guess. So I do think Lightsmith is really good, but I don't think it is better than Farseer Shaman. Farseer Shaman is still, you're playing Resto Shaman. You are lacking the burst healing from your totemic and your surging totem, but you still do pretty good ancestor healing. I think Farseer is one of those where, like, I don't know, it would need to be buffed to be really strong for you to want to play it over totemic, honestly, because I think totemic is really, really strong. Outside of that, Flame Shaper, they did buff them for their raid performance, and then they were like, oh crap, let's nerf them. So I do think, like, it would take, I don't know what it would take. It would take like kind of a rework for Flame Shaper to kind of feel as good in Mythic Plus as Chrono Warden, or even as it does in Raid. I just think those living bombs are not going to be balanced to a point where they're going to be good in Raid and good in Mythic Plus. They're going to have to nerf them for their Raid performance, which is just going to keep them down in Mythic Plus, in my opinion. So let me do one last scan over this. Does this look right? This looks fine to me. I do think one thing that I am going to look at, basically you could look at the tier list like this. Like, Disc is there, but it's really not. I haven't really been able to fully test these changes yet because they are pretty recent. I've been testing all the other changes. I do think these two at the top are pretty interchangeable, and I do think that since Resto Shaman plays very well in both compositions, you know, the God comp of whatever are just the 5 best specs that will buff each other, and they play very good actually in the physical comps because they give that Wind Fury buff, whatever it's, I think it's called Wind Fury, right? But I do think that they are a fantastic healer, and it's looking like they could be the one to dethrone Disc Priest, and the throne is very shaky right now in my opinion. But guys, now that we made it to the end of the video, please stick around because I do want to say something. I have, ever since I started making content, I've had a dream of being sponsored by G Fuel. I don't know where this started, but it's just, I've been saying it on my stream. This is my like #1 dream. And every now and then I just apply trying to get even them to consider me. And, you know, I'm still a very small content creator. And those applications don't go anywhere. However, I just threw up a random application the other day and they gave me a trial link. They basically said you have a week to impress us, see how many clicks you can get, see if, you know, anyone of your viewers drinks G Fuel or just wants some shaker cups or anything like that, or our hydration formula. So definitely check out that link in the description if you care to. Don't worry, you don't have to if you don't care for that stuff, but I think it's fantastic. Okay, it's my caffeine of choice. I really like the watermelon flavor. I like the Sage Mode Naruto flavor. It looks awesome, tastes awesome, and I love the shaker cups. They're good for my protein shakes as well as shaking the caffeine. So if you're interested in that, feel free to check out that link in the description below. It would really, really, really help me out. You have no idea. So thank you guys so much for all the support. I just wanted to keep this up to date. This is a meta tier list. This is not a fun tier list. This is not a pug tier list. Those will be coming. Trust me, I promise you I will make one of those as well. This is just a prediction of the meta. And once again, this is a prediction based on PTR. Things are subject to change. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure and hit the like button on your way out. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the Season 3 content. I have so much stuff coming your way. Trust me, I am working night and day to get this stuff out to you. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of it. It's my goal to make healing as easy as possible for you in Season 3. So don't miss any of that. Subscribe, like the video, comment below. I don't know how good this tier list is or how excited this makes you to play X Healer or X Hero Talent Tree. But I'm going to go ahead and get out of your hair. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, take care, guys.